It's time to set out on another adventure with me, the casual competitor, and my dog Obi. Today we're going to dive into some Zendikar speculation and look at all the mechanics that could see reprints. Okay guys, we are headed back to Zendikar for the third time, and I'm beyond stoked about this. I don't even know how to describe to you guys how excited I am. There's a lot of stuff that's really exciting about this set. To get started though, I want to touch upon one of the more exciting elements of it, the fact that we're getting a new product line. With this set, they're going to be doing a new type of booster pack. We're going to be seeing our regular booster packs, which are meant for drafting, meant for limited play. We're going to still see our collector booster packs, which are meant for that high value, a lot of foils, a lot of rares, and a lot of showcase cards. We're going to see our themed packs, which normally have a color or maybe even see some creature types attached to them. And lastly, we're going to see our new product, our set boosters. Now, the set boosters don't have to follow any of the traditional laws of booster packs. So what we're actually going to see is kind of what they refer to as a journey through our booster. You're going to start off with like a little bit of like a, hey, welcome, see what's going on. When you get to see like a land card, you'll get to see a few commons, and then it's going to ramp up from there. You have some wild card spots that are going to be, showcase cards. You're going to potentially see multiple rares in them. And then you're going to get to the end of the pack where for the first time ever, they might replace your token or ad card with something else. Now, the interesting thing about this is what it could be replaced with is something called the list. Now, the list is not all revealed yet, but what they do say is that it's going to be reprints of cards that fit into the set in some way or shape. That way, your booster pack makes sense still. But what I'm really excited about this is the fact that earlier in this year, they made the ultimate secret lair fetch lands. I was not super stoked about it. I did not like the fact that these awesome looking lands did not have a foil version. But they did say later in the year we're going to be making them again. When Double Masters was announced, I really thought that was going to be where it was at. It's not in there either. So now as the year's starting to wind down a little bit, we have one more standard set, and that's Zendikar Rising. They did say it's not going to be put in the standard, but this set booster is a perfect way to add them in. I mean, you could be opening these set packs, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get a fetch land, and you're more than excited, because not only did it not take away from the rest of the pack, but that's just added value, because you would have gotten a token otherwise. I absolutely love it. I think that that's the best way to do it, but we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, it's not on the list yet, but that's something I wanted to talk about because I think that's really exciting. My main focus in this video, though, is I want to go over all the different mechanics that could be reprinted. Mayra has mentioned that he wants to do a mix of 2 returning mechanics and 1 mechanic that is mix of old and new. So it's going to be a mechanic that we may have seen before, but not exactly the same way. It's going to have a bit of a twist on it. But because of that, I decided to compile this huge list of all the different Zendikar mechanics and go through all of them and then kind of rate them on where I think each one's going to fall as far as how likely and how unlikely it is to get reprinted. Right off the rip, I'm going to give you guys the list I got here, and then we're going to kind of break it down. Original Zendikar gave us a total of 7 different mechanics. We had landfall, we had quest enchantments, we had trap cards, we had multi-kicker cards, we had annihilator, level up, rebound, and totem armor. All those were great. When we came back to Zendikar for the Battle of Zendikar expansion, so to speak, as to Zendikar, we got Devoid, Ingest, Rally, Awaken, Support, Cohort, and Surge. It is also worth noting that Landfall got a second printing in Battle for Zendikar. So, once again, playing off of Mayro's information here, he did say we will not be seeing Eldrazi on Zendikar. That's worth noting because there are several mechanics from these older sets that are linked to Eldrazi. You got Annihilator, which was notoriously seen on these huge Eldrazi's back in Rise of Zendikar, or Rise of the Eldrazi, sorry. In that set, you had all these gigantic monsters that whenever they would swing, your opponent would have to sacrifice a number of enchantments equal to their Annihilator cost. They were really devastating. Emrakul is obviously the most well known of them. She had, I think, if memory serves, Annihilator 9. So every time she swung, 9 permanents from opponents on the battlefield just disappeared, basically. Then you have Devoid, which was from Battle for Zendikar, and you also have Ingest. Those two mechanics are a little less devastating. Devoid just made the card colorless, but I don't think we'll see that reprinted either. It is still kind of tied to the Eldrazi because the Eldrazi were all colorless creatures, but not all the Devoid cards were actually Eldrazi. Some of them were instants and sorceries. And then you had Ingest, which whenever that creature would deal damage to your opponent, it would make that opponent exile a card from the top of their library. All those cards were, or all those mechanics were really okay, but like I said, they're all kind of linked to the Eldrazi, and I really don't think we'll see Devoid come back either. They're ones I just immediately scratched off the list. Devoid and Ugin in the same standard set or block or season, whatever you want to call it, for an entire year is just really, really upsetting to me. I think that would make that the top tier deck, and it would be very hard for people to play anything but that, because when you're able to be the only one with stuff on field and you just slam an Ugin, exile your opponent's entire field, and then swing in with whatever you got, or even hold it back if your opponent's got a couple of Void cards across the way, it's not going to be something you want to see. But maybe we'll see Devoid for the opposite reason too, because it would enable everybody to have something that would stick around after somebody tries to board wipe you with Ugin. I don't think that's enough to make it not devastating when your opponent would just have more of that on their side of the field. You keeping one creature and your opponent keeping 5 is kind of a little unbalanced, and so that just kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. But I could be wrong. I mean, that could be something they want to push, is Ugin's presence in these upcoming blocks. So maybe they'll just do it because they want Ugin to be that powerful. However, I do want to touch on the story arc of Zendikar here for a second. It's a little bit hard to go too depth with it. I could do a whole video and just talk about how amazing they did with this storyline. Because the first Zendikar, you were introduced to this plane that was very rich with mystery. You didn't know what was going on. You had a lot of adventurous feel to it. And that's something that people did fall in love with. I love that idea. The other really cool thing was they had a treasure hunt in packs, in which in original Zendikar, you could pull cards from older sets. So it kind of goes back to those set boosters. It's kind of giving it that kind of old school Zendikar feel. But what was really cool was it introduced Nissa as a planeswalker, but you get to see like the beginning steps of her journey and how she became a planeswalker, because she has this awesome vision of these gigantic monsters and they're just tearing apart her plane, and it frightens her so much that she planeswalks away, and then things go south from there. Like I said, I don't want to get too in depth in it, but basically she foresaw the coming of the Eldrazi. After the Eldrazi arrive, they wreak havoc for a while until the Oath of the Gatewatch comes along, and once the Gatewatch shows up, they're able to figure out a way to kind of wrangle these Eldrazi and kind of basically stop them. Like I said, it's an awesome story arc to begin with, but where we're falling into it in the fall is that we are coming back to a plane that's been ravaged and destroyed by these Eldrazi, and it's kind of mending. It's trying to come back together and become what it once was before they were there. Because of this, and because we've already seen Landfall printed 2 times, I don't think we're going to see Landfall, but I do think we're going to see a land-based mechanic. There's very few mechanics out there that are land-based, but one idea I had was that this could be the one that has kind of like a new twist on it, and they could do something that's not Landfall, but Land Rise, go along with the Zendikar Rising theme here. What I kind of envision if they do something like that with Land Rise is that it is a mechanic that would bring lands back from the graveyard or enable you to play lands from the graveyard. Maybe you pay so much mana and you're able to do it. I'm not working in R&D, so I don't know exactly how it would work, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a graveyard-based mechanic for lands. And right now we have some cards that would synergize really well with that, because you have your Fabled Passages and your Triomes, and both of those are cards that you can get into your graveyard and then buy back later if you need those lands. And that would be pretty cool, I think, to see something that would synergize real well with those cards that are already stuff that you're going to want to be playing anyway, and getting an added purchase out of it with a new mechanic that maybe we get even some stuff in the set that goes along with it as well. But that's kind of my take on, like, if they do something with landfall, it's probably going to be that twist mechanic, because if they just print landfall again, that would be 3 times in a row we've gone to Zendikar and they're just like, oh, slap landfall in it. You know, that's just stock mechanic that we're going to get every time we go to Zendikar. And I give R&D a little bit more credit than just, hey, every time we're here, this is what we're doing type deal. So there's that. Going forward, though, and talking a little bit more about synergy, I'd like to touch on the next 2 mechanics I'd like to touch on is quest enchantments and totem armor. So quest enchantments were enchantments that entered the battlefield, and then they sat on your battlefield and always had a triggered ability whenever certain things you did happened. One of the basic ones is like you play it, quest for the holy relic. You play it, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a quest counter on it. Once it has so many quest counters on it, you sacrifice it and you go digging for an enchantment. Or no, an equipment. Sorry. Talking about enchantments, I said enchantment instead of equipment. No biggie. Now, this and totem armor, the reason I kind of clump them together is because they're both enchantments. Totem armor is on the opposite side, though. It's an aura that you put on a creature, and it basically is like an extra life token in a video game. Once you put it on your creature, if something were to cause that creature to be destroyed, instead you can sacrifice the totem armor, throw it into the graveyard, and your creature's still there. Now, they all are all auras, so they do all do something else as well, like give your creature +2/+2, or give your creature trample or reach, and they're all perfectly fine. I like them a lot, but the main reason that I want to highlight them is because it once again creates synergy with older sets that we already have in Standard with Theros Beyond Death. That's a set that really wants to see enchantments on your battlefield with abilities like Constellation, so it would make really good synergy for you to have that and something in this set that has a whole bunch of enchantments. And so those were a couple that were higher on the list. Creature type here that I'd also like to mention is allies. Now, allies soak up a couple of these old school mechanics from the previous Zendikars. The first time around, they didn't technically have a keyword associated with them, but every ally had a very similar effect. Whenever they'd enter the battlefield, it would cause something to happen. Most of the time, it was putting counters on things. You have, I think, 5 or 6 allies from the first time around, and whenever an ally entered the battlefield, they got a +1/+1 counter on themselves. However, when we went back in battle for Zendikar, they actually attached a word to it, and that's where we got Rally. Rally does the same thing. Whenever an ally enters the battlefield, it causes an effect to happen, and this is wide range across the board. One of the very cool things I like about allies is they are very, very prevalent in every color. There isn't a set color for allies. There isn't even remotely a wedge that you could put them in. They are in every color and equally spread out. Now, what's really cool about this is the fact that you also had Cohort, which after you play all the allies, you have something that benefits from having them all on the battlefield, because Cohort, it would be an ability on an ally. You'd have to tap the ally with Cohort and also tap another ally, so you're tapping 2 creatures, but you'd get an effect out of it every time you did it. I personally want this to be a thing. I want allies to come back, even if it's just for a 1-card cycle in every color. I think there's been a recent rule errata for a creature type, and from the start of my video, you guys all probably know how much I love my dog. I love all my dogs, but Obi's a little special. He's very close with me. He's laying by my feet as we speak. He is my partner in crime. He is my ally. So I would absolutely lose my mind if they make a dog ally. And this is a prime time to try and boost that creature type to begin with. And they could even go as far as to making like an ally for each color that is an animal companion. Like you could have a black bat. You could have blue seal or turtle or something, or even bird. And then white could be dog, and you could have red be, a lizard or salamander or something like that. And then lastly, you got green, which would just be a beast, just stock. We don't know exactly what kind of creature you are, but you're a beast. So that's kind of my idea as to what I think they need to at least do with allies. Like I said, there's a bit of wishful thinking on my part because I would love to just have a dog ally. But since there is two mechanics related to allies, I really wouldn't be surprised to see them come back and still see that camaraderie pulling Zendikar through and showing these people who came together to fight this menace stay together because they're now bonded by it. And so I like the idea of seeing one of the mechanics, but they aren't ranked super high because I do not know how prevalent the alliance is going to be since they do not have a threat to actually go after. But, the land has been really devastated here, so it's not 100% out of the realm of possibility. And speaking of that devastated land, brings us to our next mechanic, Awaken. Awaken is a mechanic that was introduced in Battle for Zendikar that allows us to pay an additional mana cost, and then it would cause one of our lands to become a creature. This is really cool. I liked it a lot because it just gave added value to a lot of cards in Limited. Like you'd be playing these cards for their effect, but you top deck them late in the game in a Limited game, and you look down and you have like 12 lands, and you're like, oh, cool, I get another body for free. Like, all I got to do is tap 4 additional lands, and here's a 3/3. Like, I loved it. I think, though, the main thing about it, though, is the fact that what was really cool about the time was that this was their way of saying, look, even the land is rising up to fight the Eldrazi. The land is itself, the royal, as it's referred to, the like living land in Zendikar is called the royal, was actually physically acting against the Eldrazi. I liked it a lot. I did. That's kind of a little bit rough for the same reason I think that Devoid is a little rough, because you give your opponent the ability to like slam an Ugin, kill your things, and then clear board state. I'm just going to turn this land into a 5/5, and it's still colorless, so he's going to protect Ugin the entire rest of the game while I shoot you for 3, and then once you're close enough, I'll just swing with him a couple times. That could, once again, not be as bad as I'm thinking it is. I know it sounds like I'm harping a lot on Ugin, but somebody's got to. He's pretty much the most powerful planeswalker ever, so somebody's got to knock him down a few pegs, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm also going to say, though, that this set is all about exploration. This set is supposed to go back to the adventure of Zendikar, the, like, bushwhacking through the jungle type stuff. So that brings us to the concept of what happens when, you're bushwhacking through the jungle and you accidentally step on, say, the wrong tile in a dungeon floor. You end up, getting stuck with a whole bunch of spikes or landing in a pitfall, right? So that's why they invented trap cards. Trap cards were really cool. They always had an alternative cost that was super cheap, usually like 1 or 2 mana. Some of them were even free, if I remember correctly. But they enabled you to pay that cost only if your opponent did something specific in their turn. So, like, well, not in their turn, but as the time you cast it. So, like, one that comes to mind is Archive Trap. Archive Trap made your opponent mill cards, but only if they've searched their library. Now, you could pay 4, I think it was 4, maybe it could be more, to actually just play it, but it always benefited you way more to just activate the trap part of it and just be like, you searched your deck, well, here, just mill 10. So there is that. But on the flip side of that coin, what happens if you survive the level of the dungeon? Well, any good D&D player would tell you that you would probably level up. Leveling up was another mechanic introduced in the original Zendikar. It was introduced in Rise of the Eldrazi, but it wasn't tied to any Eldrazi. Level up was basically showing people rising to the occasion of fighting the Eldrazi, with you having these little creatures and you just keep pumping mana into them, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on. So you might have like a 1/1, but by level 3 it would be a 3/3, and then by level 7 it would be a 6/6 trampler. That's just like a base example. I can't stress enough though how awesome Zendikar is. Like storytelling wise, art wise, just everything about this plane was absolutely awesome. I loved everything about going there the first time. I loved everything about going there the second time. So even in the storytelling, it is a place unlike anywhere else. The mana is super abundant. It's overflowing. And that leads to a lot of very interesting things. It's what drew the Eldrazi there in the first place, because they basically drink the mana from places and move on. They're like locusts. This is why we had the ability to converge. Converge benefits, or you get benefits from converge when you tap multiple colors of mana into the same spell. So you might have like one of my favorite cards, Bring to Light. I know this card by heart. Bring to Light costs green and blue naturally, but its mana cost has additional colorless cost. However, it has converge, so it wants you to pay more colors into it. So at least your converge is 2, but your converge is more based on the number of colors you tap into it. So it then does an effect based off that. Bring to Light allows you to search your deck for a card with CMC equal to how much you converged into it. This was a really cool mechanic. It didn't see too much play because there just really wasn't a ton of very powerful converge cards. One of the things I'd absolutely love to see, I had an idea way back when Converge was first around. I called them Mercenaries. They're basically colorless cards. And they have a mana cost, and basically they adopted the color of whatever you tapped into them. So like you'd have like you'd have like your basic bear, a 2-drop that was a 2/2, no effects, or maybe some effect like, First Strike, we'll say. But if you tapped white and red into it, well, guess what? It's white and red creature. If you tapped green and blue into it, it's a blue and red creature. If you tap just green into it, it's just a green creature. I kind of like this concept. I don't think they're going to go for anything there. But I do think it would be interesting to see Converge come back and show that, while this land is mending, it's kind of meshing together and building into a much bigger and much more dangerous thing. Along the same lines, though, of being extremely abundant with mana, if you happen to find yourself in a situation where you have a whole bunch of extra mana, Multi-Kicker would definitely benefit. Multi-Kicker is a mechanic that allowed you to pay an additional kicker cost. The kicker cost would then cause an effect to happen. With Multi-Kicker, you could pay that kicker cost multiple times. It's kind of a self-explanatory mechanic. But anyway, I like this. I think that it's fine. Most of the Multi-Kicker cards, you paid a little bit extra for the effect so that you can't just keep gaining the effect over and over again without some type of drawback. But it was a really fair mechanic, and I think it wouldn't be wrong to see Multi-Kicker get kicked into this set for another reprint. That's a pretty fair one. Support, on the other hand, though, I don't mean to bash Wizards here, but I think it was a bit of a wasted keyword. Support was very good for flavor, and I'll get to that in a second, but it was a concept that in Oath of Gatewatch, it had the effect that we've seen in Magic for a while, and they just kind of slapped a word to it. Prime example is Shoulder to Shoulder. The example I'm going to use is that card. For 2 in a white, you get to support 2 and draw a card. That's all it should say if it didn't have the reminder text of what support means. So when you support, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 creatures. So support 2, you put +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 creatures. No matter which way you phrase that, like you could say put a +1/+1 counter on up to 2 creatures, draw a card, or support 2, draw a card. There's no difference. I do think, though, the main reason they did add it was, like I said, for flavor, because Oath of the Gatewatch was supposed to showcase the fact that these planeswalkers were working together to face a bigger threat. You had Jace and friends basically gather and decide, hey, we're going to take down the Eldrazi. We're the only ones powerful to do it, and once the Eldrazi are gone, we're going to take on bigger and badder threats. I liked the idea. I liked the overall idea of the Gatewatch, and this was a prime card to showcase the fact that they're all supporting each other and all working together along with the allies to try and finally put an end to the Eldrazi. I don't rank it very high on the list. I think that it is a fair mechanic, but like I said, I think it's one of those wasted keywords, and I think R&D is not about to just waste a keyword here either. I think that we will see it maybe in a set where it would make sense flavor-wise, but I don't think at this moment it does, even though I do think that the people of Zendikar are working together to rebuild their home. I don't think that support would be the way that it would be showcased, if that makes sense. So we have a couple left here. We have Surge, and Surge basically benefited from you playing another card in the same turn. If you had already played a card, or even a teammate in like a two-headed giant situation had played a card, you would be able to play this card with Surge for its Surge cost, which was a reduced casting cost. It reduced your casting cost, but it didn't really do much else. Some of them had something. If you paid the Surge cost, it would happen. The biggest one is Bushwhacker. It enters the battlefield, and all your creatures get +1/+0 in haste if you paid the Surge cost, rather than paying its natural cost. That's a prime example of it. Ironically, unlike most of them, the Surge cost for that one was a little more, because you benefited from surging it. And then there is Rebound. Rebound was the opposite side of this. It did not have an additional casting cost for an additional effect, but when you played the card, you actually got to play it twice. Rebound would then, on the spell's resolution, put it in the exile, and then at the beginning of your next upkeep, you played it from exile, and then it went to your graveyard. So the Rebound cards were really cool because they allowed you to get the effect twice. One of them gave your creature unblockable, and that's pretty powerful, 2 turns of a creature being unblockable. So I could see it coming around, but neither of them see much story push. There's not a lot in the storytelling to say, hey, these are things we want to do. Like I said, I'm very story driven when I think about mechanics. I think about what could be and what couldn't be, just because I like things to make sense with the story. And for the most part, it seems like Wizards does too. Another thing I'd like to mention, though, before we get kind of wrapped up here, is that Mayro also mentioned that he is very excited to put this 6-land cycle into the set. I'm extremely confused and excited and worried. I really don't know how to feel about a 6-land cycle, because I kind of did all the numbers and I can't figure out what exactly they are. He did mention they're dual lands, so they aren't going to have 3 colors or 4 colors, but it's very, very strange to me that there's 6 of them, because most of the time when you think about dual lands, you see 5 at a time. You see, either friendly colored ally lands, or you see enemy colored lands. And so 6 in one set is very, very quirky to me, be the proper word. But what's even more interesting about this is that Mayro has mentioned this 6-land cycle is something he's wanted to do since pretty much he started in Magic, which he started in R&D in 95. So he's had a lot of time to perfect whatever this is, and I'm both a little bit scared and a little bit excited. I do think it's going to be very interesting if this 6-land cycle does actually involve something to do with the mechanic that I just discussed with you all about the land rise. Maybe you have, ability on them themselves that would allow you to get the lands back from the graveyard. Who knows? I think that this is a pretty good summation of all the abilities here. With all this in being said, I think one of the big things that we're going to be seeing here in the next month, because this is August, we're going to start seeing some spoilers rolling in hopefully here soon, and we're going to actually see what some of these mechanics are. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this holds up. So I'll probably do something where I'm coming back and showing you guys some of these clips and seeing how wrong I really was, because I don't expect to be right about any of it. I'm just giving you guys my take on it. Like I said, I played during Battle for Zendikar. I actually didn't get an opportunity to play during original Zendikar, but when I came back into Magic, it was shortly after that. I got the opportunity to find out a lot about the set way back when. So when we went to Battle for Zendikar, I was more than stoked then. Not to mention, you know, we did get the expedition lands. The expedition lands were amazing. I can't really, you know, discredit my excitement, because that was part of it. That definitely was a big part of it. But I did love the set, and I know I have several friends that game into Magic during Battle for Zendikar. So as we roll back to it, I know we're all waiting with bated breath to see what's coming, and I'm super excited. I hope that we don't see, you know, some really kind of wasted time here. I hope that the mechanics are really good. Like I said, 2 out of 3 are going to be something from this list, though. So this gives you guys a little bit of time to kind of think about what you'd want to see, because, I mean, everybody's got your own opinion. You might want to see Surge. You might like playing 2 cards a turn, and that might be ranked higher on your list. But, you know, no hard feelings if I'm wrong. No hard feelings if you're, you know, if you think I'm full of it. That's Magic. You know, that's a great part of this game, is that we can all have our own opinions. But I'd love to hear back from you guys. I'd love to hear any thoughts you guys have, you know, especially your thoughts on, you know, what this land-based mechanic could be, because that's kind of the wild card here. I really do think we're going to see a land-based mechanic, but it's really hard for me to say that we're going to see landfall, because, like I said, that'd be really weird to see it 3 times in a row. But if that happens, that happens, and, you know, kind of puts a lot of stuff out the window. But you know, yeah, if you guys like Landrise or think that's something that's coming, then, you know, let me know. If not, you know, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys have a different opinion on what you think the land mechanic could be. Besides that, you know, I'll be back next week with something new, and that's kind of what I got for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as we did making the video. Me and Obi will be up to more antics next week. Feel free to hit the like and subscribe button to see more of what we're up to, and we will be back soon with new videos.